Please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber will hear the observation and response by other parties to the presentation of key documents related to Tramka Cooperative and Krang Tachan Security Center. Mrs. Chia Siu Huang, please report the attendance of the parties and other individuals at today's proceedings. Chia Siu Huang, Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to this case are present. Mr. Nguyen Chi is present in the holding cell downstairs. He has waived his rights to be present in the courtroom. The waiver has been delivered to the greffier. It should also be noted that Liu Savanna, who is a counsel, has been requested by the Nguyen Chi's defense team, is present in the courtroom as well. President, thank you. The Chamber now decides on the request by Nguyen Chi. The Chamber has received a waiver from Nguyen Chi, dated 30th April 2015, which states that due to his health, that is headache, back pain, he cannot sit or concentrate for long, and in order to effectively participate in future hearings, he requests to waive his right to participate in and be present at the 30th April 2015 hearing. He advises that his counsel advised him about the consequence of this waiver, that in no way it can be construed as a waiver of his rights to be tried fairly or to challenge evidence presented or admitted to this court at any time during this trial. Having seen the medical report on Nguyen Chi by the duty doctor for the accused at the ECCC dated 30th April 2015, who notes that today Nguyen Chi has a chronic back pain and dizziness when he moves, and recommends that the Chamber shall grant him his request that he can follow the proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the Chamber grants Nguyen Chi his request to follow today's proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs via and audio-visual means. The AV unit personnel are instructed to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that he can follow the proceedings. That applies for the whole day. Pursuant to Internal Rule 22.2a of the ECCC internal rules, the Chamber will proceed with the formality as at the request of the Nguyen Chi's defense. The Chamber has received a request from Nguyen Chi's defense to allow for the Chamber to allow Mr. Liu Savanna to be a defense counsel for Nguyen Chi during the proceedings. The request has been attached to the submission to the Chamber and has been placed in the case file. The Chamber is of the view that Mr. Liu Savanna is qualified to defend the accused Nguyen Chi before the Chamber, and for that reason, the Chamber requests Mr. Sun Aron to make a formal request to the Chamber for Mr. Liu Savanna. And Mr. Sun Aron, you may proceed with the formality. Counsel Sun Aron. Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors. My name is Sonarunt, Nunchi's Defense Counsel. I have the honor to present Mr. Liu Sawana, who has been a legal advisor to Nunchi's defense, and he is here now with me, and I seek a recognition from the Chamber. President, thank you, Mr. Sonarunt. And Mr. Liu Sawana, you are now recognized as a defense counsel for Nunchi in case 002 for the purpose of the proceedings before this chamber. You may be seated. The chamber would like to hand the floor to the co-prosecutors and the lead co-lawyers for civil parties to respond to the key document presentations by the defense teams in relation to Tram Cooperative and the Grantchan Security Center. Both the prosecution and the lead co-lawyers have a combined time for half a day session. You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, Counsel. And to let you know, I expect I will finish my remarks probably before the morning break. And I've been told by the civil parties lawyers they have no comments, so I expect we will finish well within early in terms of our allocated half day. As Nuon Chea's counsel noted in his presentation the other day, there were 138 documents that were listed in what was the co-prosecutor's Annex 8, an annex of the surviving contemporaneous records from Tram Coc District and Krang Tachan Security Center. The English translations of those documents totals presently about 700 pages. And as Mr. Cope also correctly noted, there are a number of documents on the case file from that annex that are in the case file as one entry or one document, but are in fact multiple documents that were copied together at some point in time. So the number of actual surviving records from Tram Coc and Krang Tachan is probably substantially more than 138, probably somewhere around 300 individual records. Because of that, Your Honors, it is quite revealing that neither defense team was able to present any documents helpful to their case from amongst those hundreds of surviving records from this model district, this place that was recognized by Nuon Chea, Khieu Samphan, and the Central Committee as one of 3 model districts in all of democratic Kampuchea. The Khieu Samphan defense could not find even a single document to present from amongst the surviving records of Tram Coc. And for the reasons I will now explain, the Tram Coc records that were presented by the Nuon Chea defense only serve to further evidence the systematic crimes and atrocities that took place in this model district of the Communist Party of Kampuchea. Your Honors, the first 2 group of documents that the Nuon Chea defense presented were, as they described them, documents showing that some prisoners had been subjected to re-education by the communes before they were sent to Krang Tachan. And second, documents showing that the communes sought instructions or guidance from Angkar, the district, regarding what to do with perceived enemies. In our submission, these documents do not help the defense. All they serve to prove, Your Honors, is that the security apparatus through which perceived enemies of the CPK were arrested, sent to re-education offices, and subjected to interrogation, torture, and execution was a systematic, organized process overseen by the party leaders through a hierarchical chain of command. All of the examples read by the Nuon Chea defense were people who ultimately ended up at Krang Tachan, a place where there was no re-education, only death, for 99% of the prisoners sent there, as we have heard in this trial. How does it help the defense that some of these people were repeatedly persecuted and sent for re-education before ending up at Krang Tachan? Second point, Your Honors, on this, almost every example that was presented by Mr. Kope in these documents were people whose alleged wrongdoing for which they were being re-educated was stealing food to eat. By stealing, we are talking about people who were hungry, who would take a coconut from a tree, who would dig up cassava from the ground. And the documents presented by the defense show that such people sometimes were subject to re-education by their unit or the commune. Not sure what that re-education would be. Trying to train their minds, perhaps, to forget about how hungry they were. But the documents also show that for those who could not forget how hungry they were and who kept looking for food to survive, their ultimate fate was Krang Tachan. It is as if the defense argument is, sorry, Mr. New Person, sorry we could not feed you, but we tried to re-educate you. Now that has failed, you must go to Krang Tachan and die for stealing food to eat. Your Honors, the defense described these documents as showing a picture of Tram Kok that was not, in their words, universally brutal. That is the best they can do to show that Tram Kok District was not universally brutal. Let me take just a couple of examples of the documents the defense presented to you on this issue of re-education and instructions from Angkar. I will give you two examples of documents presented by the defense. The first one is E3 2424 at Khmer ERN 00270-755 through 56, English ERN 00322-220, and French ERN 00612-219. Again, the document E3/2424. Your Honors, this is a document from Ang Tasam Commune addressed to Comrade Elder Brother of District 105, Comrade Elder Brother Police of District 105, regarding a person named Kong Vet. And let me read to you the first part of this document and the last part. The first paragraph, to respected brother. It is about the activities of the enemy named Kong Vet, which were mostly stealing. He was such a great stealer, who had been educated so far by the group, unit, and by the collective meetings for the past 3 years. But he was not deterred. After he was individually educated by a hot measure, he had only confessed and said that the revolution knew it. And the last paragraph of this report states as follows, quote, "Therefore, I would like to physically send over the above 3 enemies, along with this enclosed report, for further interrogation in order to seek for the undercover networks of those enemies hiding in the villages and communes, and to take further measures in order to achieve according to the guidelines of the party." This document was submitted again to try to show that life in Tramkak district was not universally brutal. And for that, the defense presents to you a document recording a person who was educated by hot measures in his commune or unit. They present a document which shows that people who stole food were branded as enemies and subjected to interrogation to try to find a network of enemies. And all of this is stated to be in accordance with, quote, "the guidelines of the party." Your Honors, we know that Mr. Kung Vet ended up at Krang Tachan after this report because he appears in some of the notebooks from the prison, in 2 of them, in fact. The first is in one of the prisoner lists in Krang Tachan notebook E3/4083, E3/4083 at Khmer 000-68026, English 00323-949, and French 0077856. You will find he is one of the, his name appears in the list of prisoners. His name also appears in one of the interrogation notebooks, E3/4092, E3/4092. At this time, I only have the English ERN for you, which is 00834-828, 834-828. And I can tell you, in those notes, the interrogator records that Mr. Kung Vet stole potatoes 5 times, coconuts 3 times, and corn twice. My second example document that was presented by the defense during this part of their presentation that I will comment on is one of the examples of party officials behaving, quote-unquote, cautiously. Those were the words of Noon Chea's counsel. And as an example of that, he presented document E3/2453, E3/2453 at Khmer ERN 00270-784 through 785, English ERN 00388-586, a French ERN 00611-775. Let me read this document to you, Your Honors, in its entirety. It is a 18 October report from Nang Nang Commune addressed to the district party that reads as follows. Number 1, enemy situations which have appeared in the base area are as follows. Lu Eng Tri, Sus Ti, Yun Yen, and Bang Non. All 4 of these persons have carried out activities previously reported to the party, and we have subsequently monitored them because they have assembled together at Tumnip Tre Tung, as was previously reported. Now today, they had another meeting, and they went to contact one another in the vicinity of Samlong subdistrict in 106, because this land is on the border, and when they mind cattle, they meet one another. There is no grasp of what plans they have. There is no grasp of what plans they have are unknown. They get along very well with one another. My analysis is that they have plans to smash our revolution. For example, they beat the cattle hard when they plow. At the re-education meetings, they do not listen much, and they do not pay attention to their work. The activities of all 4 of these persons are untrustworthy. About their positions, Luo Eng Tri was a pilot in aviation. Number 2, Yun Yen was secretary of the War Materials Warehouse. Number 3, Sus Ti was a military police chief. And 4, Bang Non was a soldier, a corporal. The report concludes, may the party be informed about the 4 of them, and please provide us information on whatever the party decides. That is the end of the report from the commune. What was the decision of the party about these 4 suspicious people who got along well with another and liked to spend time together? In this same document, there is a response. On the very same day, Tassan wrote to Comrade Brother Kit, quote, I have decided that these 4 persons should be arrested. Your Honors, this is Nuon Chea's idea of behaving cautiously, arresting people just because they look suspicious and might be enemies. That was life in Tram Kok District. The document I just mentioned to you made reference to the analysis of the commune chief that they may have plans to smash the revolution. So let me now address very briefly one of the other submissions or issues that was presented by Nuon Chea, which was documents that show a different meaning of the word smash. And, Your Honors, in every country of the world, I would imagine, there are words that can have different meanings in different contexts. In English, saying that I'm going to kill a person means that. But the word kill can be used for other purposes. I could say that someone is killing my dream to become Prime Minister. The same is true in Khmer, obviously. The word smash, when it is used to smash in reference to smashing a cooperative smashing the revolution has one meaning, that it has a very different meaning when we're talking about smashing a person, smashing a prisoner. When the Khmer Rouge talk about smashing prisoners and people, they are talking about executing them. The fact that the word has different meanings in other contexts doesn't change that. Another category of documents that was presented that I will quickly address. The Noon Chea defense made some presentations on documents that reference hot methods of interrogation or torture. Let me make 2 points on this, 2 comments. First, there is simply no basis for the defense to assert that the use of torture would have been documented every time it took place. There's no evidence of any such practice or any such rule. Because of that, it's not probative for the defense to cite the number of times the word hot method of interrogation appears in a notebook and then conclude from that it was not common. We have to consider, in addition to the documents, obviously, the testimony of the victims in cadres to fully understand the interrogation practices at Krang Tachan. Second comment. The defense in its presentation overlooked that references to hot and cold methods of interrogation were not limited to Krang Tachan documents or notebooks. It is not only in the notebooks kept by the interrogators that we see these references. In my presentation, I referenced for you, I will not repeat the documents, but I referenced for you a number of documents in which commune and district officials are discussing the use of hot methods or cold methods of interrogation. That is compelling evidence, Your Honor, that refutes the defense position here, as it shows that the use of these interrogation methods, the use of torture, was commonly known and authorized by the party leadership in Tramcock. Another issue that was raised by Noon Chea in discussing, or in his document presentation, was the argument that because we don't have color originals, we can't verify Petch Chim's testimony about red ink being used when instructions were given to smash prisoners. Let me point out here that Petch Chim was speaking about the practice of his sector secretary, Saum, who was sector secretary until the end of 76 or the start of 1977. And as Your Honors are aware, the surviving documents from Krang Tachan and from Tramcock, of course, are only a sample or portion of the documents from that district and from that security office. And they are mostly the documents from 1977 and the first part of 1978. To my knowledge, there are no documents from 1975. There are a few records from 1976. But the bulk of the documents that were found, that were fortunately found and survived, related to the period after Sector Secretary Saum was Sector Chief. So the issue raised by Mr. Kopi, in other words, is an academic one, because we don't have records, we don't have any surviving examples from the period that Saum was Sector Chief, in which he was using the practice described by Petch Chim to mark red X's next to the names of prisoners. And let us not forget why it is that we don't have a set of all the records from Cham Kok, Krang Tachan, and other locations of democratic Kampuchea. It is because the Khmer Rouge, before fleeing into the mountains, systematically tried to burn and destroy all the records that documented the atrocities they committed while they were in power. I turn now to the issue of documents that are alleged forgeries. Your Honors, let me first start by saying that having, in my view, failed to present any substantive documents that are in any way helpful to the defense, they then turned to doing something that really they were not supposed to do in this hearing. This is an issue relating to admissibility. We were instructed not to deal with that. We had hearings 2 years ago at which the admissibility of these documents was debated and decided. So these arguments come a little late. Nonetheless, they were made. He is making this allegation, and I will respond. Mr. Koppe pointed to a document that had 2 sets of handwriting in it and wants to jump to the conclusion that therefore this must be a forgery. We have heard a testimony, Your Honors, that the district, commune, and prison officials sometimes were not highly literate people. Moreover, like any people who have leadership roles, they have assistants who would write documents for them that they would then sign. So if there are 2 different sets of handwriting in a document, and there are many documents like this, it only means that 2 people were involved in preparing that document. That one person, an assistant, wrote it, and the district, if it was coming from the prison chief, the district leader, the commune chief, signed it. The fact there are 2 sets of handwritings in a document in no way means it's a forgery. Another argument or another document that was the defense suggests is a forgery is 1 page out of E3/4145. E3/4145. And it is the Khmer page 000-68736. Mr. President, I have a slide of that document. With your leave, I'd like to show that on the screen at this time while I comment on it.
President, you may proceed.
Thank you. If we can show the first slide on the screen, please. And in this first slide, here you see the entire page, the entire document, which has a long name, but the first part of it is names of prisoners at M105. It is a handwritten list. Now, there were 2 points put forward by Counsel Koppe here. One is this must be a forgery because it uses M105 As your honors are well aware, M is short for Munti in Khmer, which means office. So this is just someone using a shorthand term for Office 105, a shorthand reference to an office that was commonly called the Education Office 105, Re-Education Office 105. There's nothing in the fact that someone wrote Munti 105 that means this document is a forgery. Another general comment about this assertion. At the same time, counsel suggests that this handwritten prisoner list is a forgery. He acknowledges that another document within E3 4145, which is a typed version of almost the same list, is a genuine document. And I cannot help but question and wonder, why would someone go to the trouble of forging this handwritten document when counsel is acknowledging that there is a type record that has the same information that is legitimate? None of this makes any sense. It is, where I come from, something we would call a crazy conspiracy theory. And let me specifically show you why that is. The second argument that counsel made as to why this document must be a forgery was that it contains incorrect biographical information for Miyasoka's relatives. His mother, Hun Kim Seng, who I believe in this one is referred to as Hun Na, her alias Na, and his sister Mias Sarat, who is referred to here as Mias Rat. So if we can go back to the slide again, please. I want to focus you on the part of the document that Mr. Kope says contains incorrect biographical information about these two, and that therefore this must be a forgery. Can we put the second slide on the screen? So in this slide, Your Honors, we've zoomed in on the part of the document that has the biographical information of the prisoners. The mother, Hun Na, and the sister, Mias Rat, are the third and fourth persons on the list. If we could go back to the document again, please. And when you look at that, Mr. Kope has made this assertion without checking the Khmer original. The problem seems to be in how the document was translated in English. Because when you look at the actual document, the information that is next to the names of these two people is exactly correct. For Hun Na, there is nothing listed. There is just lines in the original. For Mias Rat, what is listed is Sri Kru Village, Chiang Thorn Commune. Now, in interpreting that document, a translator filled in information for Hun Na that is actually blank in this document. And based on that, Mr. Kope has jumped to the conclusion that this is a forgery. I take you through this to show you why this is a crazy conspiracy theory. Because when you look at it, there is nothing to this. Let me look at one more group of documents in which counsel has suggested there may be forgeries. This is handwritings, some of the notes written by former district chief Tassan, who came to this court. And if I could put on the screen now, I have a slide in which I've put together four of the notes written by Tassan, identified as Tassan documents. If you bear with me for a moment. And if you look at the screen, these are four documents, all of which bear the name San. I can tell you one of these documents is one that Mr. Kope suggests is a forgery. One or two of them have been admitted by San to be his writing, and another one wasn't shown to him. I challenge you to figure out which one is the forgery. They all look the same. And if we could go back to this document again on the screen. There's one other thing I want to draw to your attention. One thing, unique kind of habit that Tassan had was using an exclamation point in his when he was addressing people in the start of his notes. You don't see this very often. You will see it quite frequently in Tassan's handwritten notes. Your Honors, I am at a loss to explain why it is counsel thinks that there are legitimate, authentic documents written by Tassan in these records, but that someone has gone to the trouble to forge it. And in fact, Tassan said nothing to that kind. If you go back to his testimony, he didn't say they were forgeries. He simply said, with some documents, it doesn't look like my handwriting. As I've already explained, it would be expected that some of the documents issued from him as district chief would have been written out by assistants for him. Would he remember that handwriting 30 years later? Probably not. To suggest that these are forgeries, there is no basis for that. These documents have been admitted, and we are well past the point in time to be following down these conspiracy theories. The last document that was addressed by counsel in this group was E34083. E34083. Your Honors, this is one of the Krang Tachang notebooks, and it is a notebook that contains prisoner lists rather than interrogation notes. Honestly, I did not understand any of the arguments as to why this was a forgery. I do note Mr. Kope made the point that there is a reference in there to a prisoner being executed on the 8th of January, 1979. Now, I don't know. I can't sit here today and tell you whether that was an error or whether Krang Tachang, as a remote prison, hadn't gotten word that it was time to flee, and that there were, in fact, people there on the 8th of January, 1979. I would submit to you it is far more reasonable conclusion that perhaps, as was the case at S21, word was late getting to Krang Tachang that it was time to head for the mountains. You will remember, and this may well be, by the way, why there are some surviving records at Krang Tachang. You will remember that the reason there are surviving records at S21 is because Duik did not get the word early that it was time to go, and he did not have time to destroy the records before he fled. So to suggest that because there's a reference here to the 8th of January 1979, that means that someone has gone to the immense trouble to create a forgery, I would suggest is simply unreasonable and baseless. What that reference does mean is that there were still people at this prison on the 8th of January 1979. And thank God that all the records were not destroyed. This issue, this challenge, this belated challenge to the authenticity of these records, Your Honors, we've already argued this. Let me just say, the evidence that we've heard over the last few months has, beyond any doubt, confirmed the reliability, the accuracy, the authenticity of these records. We've gone to trouble during our examination of witnesses to try to show to you how the witnesses' testimony are corroborated and supported by these documents. Sometimes it can be a little tedious to take you through these documents, but we did that for an important reason, which is to show that these documents are in fact reliable and authentic, that they when prisoners have come here and talked about relatives, Miyasoka, we have found references to those people in these books. When names come up of people who were commune chiefs, these documents correspond to that. We see the people who are in the records, the chiefs of communes and the chiefs of district, correspond to exactly the people who are identified by the witnesses. We also, from time to time, I like to show what I call interconnections between the documents. That people who are referenced in a report from a commune, we then see that same person's name in a prisoner list or an interrogation notebook. And I don't enjoy having to put together ERNs in 3 languages and spend time reading that. I look forward to the day where I no longer have to read ERNs in 3 languages. The reason I go through that tedious process is to demonstrate exactly that these documents are authentic, they are reliable, they are the only, I would remind you, surviving records from any district in democratic Kampuchea. They show us what life was like there at the base level. Unlike the documents in Phnom Penh that show what went on at S21, these documents show what life was actually like for normal people, base people, new people who found themselves in this district. A couple of additional subjects raised by the defense in its presentation that I will quickly cover. The defense presented a group of documents that they characterized as guidelines from the party on unacceptable behavior. And one of the ones I will comment on is E3-216. E3-216. These are the Standing Committee minutes for the 24th of August, 1975. And when Mr. Koppe presented this document to you, he read an excerpt that talked about, the excerpt he read, I quote, "We prefer to talk about the overwhelming majority of base and new people are good." What he left out was the sentence before that, which states, "Things are okay with the base people, but be vigilant against no good elements among the new people taking advantage of things, because these contemptibles would not stay with us even if we were to give them sufficiency, 2 cans of rice a day. He also didn't mention that a couple paragraphs before the Standing Committee minutes say that every type of horrible element exists among the hundreds of thousands of new people. And he didn't mention that in the list of measures of the Standing Committee, number 2 reads, use a mix of old and modern weapons, especially spikes to place along the border. Make a plan on how many spikes to be used in 1 month. All kinds of spikes must be used, those at the height of a person's foot, sole, instep, and shin up to the stomach. Now, neither the reference that Council made nor the ones I've made directly relate to Tramcock District. I'm responding simply because this has been presented to you as an example of the party establishing guidelines on acceptable or unacceptable behavior. And if you're going to look at this document, I think it is highly revealing about what the Standing Committee considered to be acceptable. And finally, Your Honors, let me comment on the last part of the presentation. Nuon Chea presented a number of documents to this chamber, documents or video, on the subject of treatment of the Khmer Krom and Buddhists, actually a couple on each subject. And in doing so, I remarked that he made use of Khmer Rouge Party propaganda. He used a broadcast by the Khmer Rouge radio, which described one of those highly orchestrated trips taken by foreign visitors, where there was a staged meeting with what was supposedly a group of Khmer Krom refugees. And he showed you a DK propaganda film in which you see Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, and others at a pagoda. Let me say simply this, Your Honors. Mr. Kope asked you to put aside conventional wisdom, to put aside the popular narrative of what happened in democratic Kampuchea, and to come with open minds. But then, what he tried to feed to us is regurgitated Khmer Rouge propaganda. I would submit, Your Honors, that what Mr. Kope really asks all of us to put aside is common sense, logic, and reason. That is something, of course, that no one can do. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the defense documents. That ends my remarks.
President, thank you. I now give the floor to the lead co-lawyer. You may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Mr. De Lassac has informed you at the beginning of this hearing, we have no comments on the documents presented by the Nuon Chea defense.
President, so I give the floor now to the defense team for Mr. Nuon Chea.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, Council.
Mr. President, we will start first with our objections to the prosecution's document presentation. We have objections to most documents they presented. So it seemed to us that the most logical way to structure our comments was to follow the prosecution's thematic breakdown and document sequence. The first theme that the prosecution explored was the conditions in the Tramcock cooperatives. And the first document they presented, which we are objecting to, was a secondary source, Ben Keenan's book, The Pol Pot Regime, document number E3/1593. And in addition to Ben Keenan's book, the prosecution also focused heavily on two other secondary sources, namely Henri Locard's report called Tramcock District in the Grip of the Khmer Rouge, that is document D313/1.2.16, and Meng 3E's book, The Chain of Terror, document number E3/2120. Therefore, Mr. President, some of my comments at this stage are general comments applying also to those books, although later I will separately address these books as well. A review of the prosecution's witness lists for this trial shows that only Henri Locard appears on its primary list of requested experts and witnesses. Ben Keenan appears only as on the reserve list, while Meng 3E does not appear at all. And at this stage, none of the three have been scheduled to testify. During its document presentation, the prosecution devoted a significant amount of its limited time to detailing the conclusions of each of these three authors. And this signals the apparent importance of the author's documents to the prosecution's case. And given that importance, our first objection is that these documents cannot be relied upon as evidence in any significant way, unless Keenan, Locard, and Ie appear in court to explain their methodology, to enable us to test the strength of their conclusions, and to learn more about their views, particularly in the case of Keenan, who we believe to be a biased Marxist scholar, strongly supporting the Vietnamese cause, I might add. Unless they do so, these documents should be regarded as unreliable and with very low probative value. It is well known that Ben Keenan is unwilling to testify in these proceedings, and therefore we should be particularly cautious at this point to give much weight to his views, if at all. And as such, I will not go through all of the various passages that the prosecution highlighted. However, Mr. President, I will give one example which highlights the need to further investigate Keenan's methodology. And that is the passage cited in which Keenan claims that, and I quote, malnutrition took a heavy toll in 1977-78, unquote, in the Southwest Zone. That is ERN English 00678719, Khmer 00638012, and French 00639223. Keenan states that this conclusion is based on what appears to be very, and I quote, partial statistics, unquote, but mostly just anecdotal accounts of people from the area. It seems clear that Keenan does not give sufficient weight, or any weight, to the impact of the long-raging civil war prior to the decay period. However, the civil war's devastation was very well documented, including in refugee reports and 8 agency reports which Keenan knew about. In fact, in another part of the book, Keenan quotes at length from a US aid report on the conditions in Cambodia just before the evacuation of Phnom Penh. And as Keenan notes, US aid said that, and I quote, When U.S. rice aid stopped in April 1975, Cambodia was on the brink of starvation, and that if ever a country needed to beat its swords into plowshares in a race to save itself from hunger, it is Cambodia. End of quote. That is English ERNs 00678526, Khmer 0063745 until 4, and French 006387993. Mr. President, before moving to my next document, I just want to note that the prosecution also relies on Ben Keenan's book in order to highlight the treatment of the Khmer Krom, which was the prosecution document presentation's second thematic focus. Now, as I've already discussed this matter in prior hearings, I will not belabor the point here again. But I would like to reiterate once again that we strenuously object to the prosecution's attempt to wedge the Khmer Krom's experience in the DK into the scope of case 002/02 as that of a de facto targeted group, despite the fact that it chose not to request it to be charged as such in the closing order. And we look very much forward, Mr. President, to receiving the Chamber's decision on this critical issue as soon as possible. Following on from Ben Keenan's book, the prosecution proceeded to present a series of additional documents focusing on the treatment of Khmer Krom and Vietnamese in the Tram Coc district. Wherever those documents refer to the Khmer Krom experience, our general objection applies. So as to avoid being repetitive, I will simply list now the relevant document numbers. That is E32435, 2049, 4082, 2281, 4083, 2438, 2262, 2048, 2428, and 4084. I apologize. We actually did give... I have to slow down? I apologize. Well, we actually did give a copy of our presentation, but I will slow down. Mr. President, we do have a number of specific objections relating to some of the documents that I just listed, so I will go now through those documents. Regarding document E3/2107, which the prosecution described as a notebook of Krang Tachan, we have two objections to make with regard to this document. First, the prosecution referred to this document in order to quote the following passage regarding a person named Duik Sam Hun. Let me quote it again, Mr. President. In late 75, when Angkar had the Yoon go back to their country, he made demands saying he wanted to go to Vietnam too, since his wife is Yoon, and he heard them say that in Vietnam they still had private occupations and still used money, but Angkar did not let him go, unquote. That is English ERNs 00290204, Khmer 00068048, and French 00655-724 until 5. Now, this document appears to be notes from a prisoner's interrogation and confession. And it seems that the prosecution seeks to rely on this document, not simply to identify the prisoner, but for the document's contents. So our objection is that we fail to see how this is in any way different from the way in which I sought to use a confession from S21 on Tuesday. There is no difference in our view. And we believe that the prosecution and also possibly the trial chamber are simply trying to impose a double standard so that it can use such confessions in broader respects than other parties. And this, of course, relates to a more general legal question we have already touched upon on Tuesday, and that is how potentially quote-unquote torture-tainted evidence may be used in this trial. As you may know, we said that already before, we have appealed that question in respect of the case 002/01 judgment, and will no doubt be discussing it at length in appeal hearings before the Supreme Court chamber soon. So I will say no more about that at this point, other than to reiterate that, as we said in our presentation on Tuesday, the prosecution characterized our argument in this regard as, and I quote unquote from their appeal response, as morally bankrupt, while, as you can see, attempting to use the same kind of evidence in the same way, as long as it fits their case. The second the second objection, Mr. President, I want to make in relation to this same document, E3/2107, is to the prosecution's characterization of this document as a Krang Tachan notebook. As far as we can tell, there's nothing in this document that specifically identifies this to be a document from Krang Tachan. What's to stop this document being, for instance, from Ang Ta Som or any other security center within the district? Next, Mr. President, I will turn to the document which the prosecution referred to as document number D157.7, and which the Chamber has already assigned the E3 number E3/5827. Our objection here is the same as our first objection regarding document E3/2107. Once again, this document appears to be a record of a prisoner's interrogation and confession, and once again the prosecution seems to be referring to it solely for its content. In particular, the prosecution refers to a passage in that confession which describes how, and let me quote again, in January 1976, Angkar rounded up the Yun people and sent them back to Vietnam, and how the Yun came to receive those Vietnamese families at Phnom Penh, but they accepted only those of pure ethnic Yun, unquote. Once again, we fail to see any difference, and only the prosecution's double standard in this respect. Next, Mr. President, I will give specific objections in relation to documents E3/2049 and E3/4082, which the prosecution cited in its section on the treatment of Vietnamese and Khmer Krom, and which appear to be a list of Khmer Krom families. Our first objection is one of form. As the prosecutor explained on Monday, these two documents appear to be two parts of a single sequential list. Why is it, therefore, that the single list was split into two documents with two different document numbers? How did that happen, and who was responsible for this? All of these are questions, and more. All of these are questions which deserve critical attention before we can safely rely on this document as evidence. Therefore, our objection is here that we do not have the original of this document, nor of 134 other so-called Tram Kok district records. We need to obtain the originals, and we need to consider it carefully. If we cannot obtain the original documents, then only limited probative value should be assigned to it. And secondly, that maybe is a proper moment to pause, Mr. President. Secondly, the prosecutor highlighted a particular annotation from this document. It was an annotation regarding a Khmer Krom woman's husband, who was apparently a Lon Nol captain, and who the document recorded as having been, and I quote, already smashed since he was first arrived. ER in English 002900263 and Khmer 000791101 and French 00774256. And this will finalize our remarks before the break. Our objection is that it appears that the prosecution's one sentence. I'm going too fast again. I apologize again. English ERNs 002900263, Khmer 00079101, and French 00774256. And this is our last remark. Our objection is that it appears that the prosecution sought to highlight this annotation in order to suggest that the husband was targeted as a Lon Nol soldier. However, in reality, we cannot draw any conclusions from this brief annotation as to the reason why the husband was killed. It just is not indicated in that document.
President, thank you, Counsel. The time is convenient for a short break. We'll take a break now and return at 10:30. The court is now in recess.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ